Allah gave us a commandment. In a sense, oh, you who believe, let not one people deride another. It may be that they are better than them. The word disability per se is quite demeaning as it connotes a negative vibe. Ladies and gentlemen, due to usage of words like disability, crippled, retarded, etc., people with different abilities get agonized. In my humble opinion, they should not be referred with said pejorative terms. Rather, we should resort to the usage of them like differently abled persons. Such people should be encouraged to participate in every facet of life. Besides, every one of us must leave no stone unturned to uplift them in our social fabric. In this respect, it is pertinent to discuss CRPD, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. CRPD is an international human rights treaty of the United Nations intended to protect the rights and dignity of persons with disabilities. It was signed on 30th of March 2007, adopted in year 2008, and was ratified by Pakistan in year 2011. The object of CRPD is to lay an emphasis on significance of equal participation of differently abled person in our strata and to halt impediments to their inclusion. For persons with disabilities, it can be difficult to find a new job. They are constantly confronted with obstacles that are often insurmountable. Persons with disabilities have the right to have equal opportunities like other people. Respected audience, it is noteworthy to mention that all the constitutional guarantees, that is, fundamental rights, take breath from right number one, that is, security of person, which clearly enunciates that no person shall be deprived of life or liberty save in accordance with law. The Honorable Supreme Court of Pakistan, in the case of Shaila Zia versus Wapda, reported in PLD 1994, Supreme Court, page 693, has efficaciously expounded the right to life by ordaining that the word life employed in Article 9 of the Constitution is very significant as it covers all facets of human existence. Life includes all such amenities and facilities which a person born in free country is entitled to enjoy with dignity, legally and constitutionally, and it cannot be restricted only to the vegetative or animal life, or mere existence from conception to death. While elaborating right to life, Supreme Court of neighboring country in the case of Mukti Morcha, AIR 1984, Supreme Court, page 802, held the right to live with human dignity must include protection of health and strength of workers, men and women, and of the tender age of the children against abuse, opportunities and facilities for the children to develop in healthy manner and in condition of freedom and dignity. Educational facilities, just and human condition of work, and maternity relief. These are the minimum requirements which must exist in order to enable a person to live with human dignity. Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan as a whole does not distinguish between a person with and without disabilities. It recognizes inherent dignity of human being, equal and inalienable right of all the people, regardless of any sort of bifurcation on the basis of caste, creed, color, race, religion, gender, etc. It applies equally to differently abled persons, as calling them with pejorative terms like disabled, mentally retarded, physically handicapped, etc., is coarse and uncalled for. Guaranteeing them full enjoyment of their fundamental rights without discrimination. Ladies and gentlemen, the vital question in this regard is, which requires to be addressed, is that why differently abled persons are meted out with prejudicial treatment on part of society merely on the basis of different abilities they possess. Why they become object of why they come object of pity while they are in a group. In my humble opinion, it is because of stigma associated with the differently abled persons, coupled with lack of awareness among the people about the rights and liberties of the said people. In addition to that, they are circumscribed to the care centers in some cases, but actually people associate stigma and shame in declaring them or deeming them as a human resource. One more eminent part is how people are viewing disability. People are also seen as disabled by barriers in society, not by their impairment or difference, not by their impairment or difference. Barriers can be physical, like building not having accessible toilets, or they can be caused by people's attitudes to difference, like assuming that disabled people cannot do certain things. We can provide equal rights to the differently abled persons only when we break the stigma and have the acceptance of them as humans. Scott Hamilton, a retired American skater and Olympic gold medalist, rightly said, the only disability in life is a bad attitude. So, going by these words, I think that the person who use pejorative terms for differently able people are in fact the ones who are not able, requiring treatment. Ladies and gentlemen, let us move forward with ambition to uplift the people with different abilities in real sense. Thank you for very much for patient hearing.
Thank you so much, my lord. Our panelists consist of Ms. Mehak Naeem. Ms. Mehak is the co-founder and director programs officer of Pehchan, Protection and Help of Children Against Abuse and Neglect, and a lecturer and a lecturer at Child Rights Department, University of Lahore. She has been involved in various projects revolving around life skill-based education, disability, care, and protection with various institutes and organizations. Also joining us on this panel is Professor Dr. Muaddad Hussain Rana. Professor Muaddad Hussain Rana is a Sitara Imtiaz awarded psychiatrist who has received honors and university distinctions in psychology, forensic medicine, special pathology, and medicine. He has published papers on mental illness and violence, myth and reality in the Armed Forces Medical Journal. His research papers have been extensively published in both national and international journals. He has served as the chief editor of the Journal of Pakistan Psychiatric Society, as the director of Center for Trauma Research and Psychosocial Interventions, and is the former dean of the Dean Faculty of Psychiatry, College of Physicians and Surgeons, Pakistan, and advisor in Psychiatry, Armed Forces Institute of Mental Health. Our third panelist is Ms. Sana Khurshid. Ms. Khurshid is a lawyer and an activist for persons with disabilities. She has served as a consultant, researcher, motivational speaker, and has lectured on disability and related civil rights topics. She is amongst the leading campaigners for the rights of persons with disabilities and advocates for disability inclusive policies. We are also joined by Barrister Haris Azmat. Barrister Azmat is a senior partner at Kilam Law. He has been providing wide-ranging legal advisory, corporate, transactional, and litigation services to a broad spectrum of companies since 2006. His clients include both public and private sector institutions and companies. He was one of the youngest advocates of the Supreme Court of Pakistan at the time of his enrollment. The panel is being moderated by Barrister Qasim Ali Chauhan. Barrister Chauhan is an advocate of the Supreme Court, currently serving as an additional Advocate General for the Government of Punjab. He has been practicing law since 2001. Barrister Chauhan has expertise in criminal, constitutional, corporate, civil, and land laws.
It's a pleasure to have you all. Dr. Saab, working with yourself. We'll start with with Pechan, the organization you work for, that primarily works with children.
Yes.
In recent years, what do you see are the activities or undertakings and the jurisprudence which is helping the implementation of international practices in relation to the rights of the children with special needs?
So when we're talking about children with disabilities and children with special needs, over the past couple of years, for example, the Child Care Commission, that was 2018, this presented a set of recommendations that revolved around children with disabilities and special needs. So when we're taking those forwards, a lot of recommendations have been focusing on health, education, and protection of children. Although, for example, if we take education, children with special needs, there is a research that shows that only 3% of children with disabilities actually attend school, which means that a lot of, it's a huge number that actually do not go to school. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done in order to include those children into schools. There are things that are happening in departments and on ground. However, it's a long way to go. And Pehchan, for example, and Rising Sun Institute for Children with Disabilities are working together to take this agenda forward.
Yeah. And these recent developments, do you see them at par with international best practices, on the way to those best practices? And what else can we do to improve?
So it is a long way to go. Since I've mentioned that the numbers are huge, and there are gaps within the departments, and there are gaps that need to be filled. But it is the beginning, and there is a lot of work that's being done by experts. So when we're talking about the children with UNCRC and CRPD, there is, I mean, there is a boundary. We know that this is something that we want to reach, but there is a lot of work that needs to be done.
Can you suggest some area where?
So, for example, in 2018, there was a writ filed by Migdad versus the state. And there were a lot of recommendations that were put forward by the experts there. So the report, Justice Project has also been working on it. So the report actually compiles a lot of recommendations by experts. There were like around 15 to 20 experts in each committee. And they suggested a lot of recommendations when it comes to health, when it comes to inclusive education, when it comes to protection right of children and legal reforms that need to be done. So when there's a lot of work that's all, the recommendations are already there. So if we just try to follow and take these recommendations forward, it'll actually be a great move.
But we are a work in progress.
There is work in progress, a lot of work in progress.
Thank you. Dr. Sahib, Dr. Sahib, I've had the pleasure of working with yourself, assisting the court in the Safia Bano case. There are certain confusions and parities in laws of different countries were considered. And the medical terminology, which is quite alien to legal world, was also considered and settled. The basic idea there vested in regard to implementation was the committees, the boards, which were to be. But do you see that being implemented?
Well, it's long overdue. I'll take the point forward that Mehak has just raised, that when it comes to policies, when it comes to legislation, when it comes to international covenants, international recommendations, treaties that we sign, sometimes they arrive far ahead of what is going on in a country in terms of its infrastructure, in terms of its social realities, in terms of the disabilities within the culture of understanding of that particular issue. So the recommendations arrive, but they come and meet the local realities that are lagging far behind. So consequently, the biggest gap between what we identify, even after the Safia Bano case, is that the action on the ground is not there.
Okay.
See, so we know what is right. We know what the Supreme Court has said. Within 8 months of the judgment of the Supreme Court, we had one of the most famous cases right here, few kilometers away from here, of the Noor Muqaddam case. And in that Noor Muqaddam case, the judge, Honorable Justice of the court at that point in time, did not follow the recommendations of the Supreme Court when the issue of the mental illness of the accused was raised. It was primarily not through that process that has been laid down in the Safia Bano case that issue was disposed.
The medical board and
the rest of it. Now, that was an ideal opportunity, at least at the federal level, to start with the constitution of a medical board, in which there is a requirement of 3 psychiatrists and 2 psychologists, to then give a judgment whether this issue that has been raised by the concerned quarters is settled according to the recommendations of the Supreme Court. See, since there was a media trial going on at that time, in that particular case, and we were in an extreme hurry to deal with that situation that had arisen, we did not implement. So what I'm trying to say here is this huge gap between what the policies, the legislation, the recommendations are, which are sometimes very well known to everybody, not only in this hall, but even the people in the street, but the action on the ground which can benefit or otherwise the person with a disability, that is not there. And I think that is an area that this particular event that is taking place today in Islamabad need to focus on. Why are we not undertaking actions on the ground? In my most humble opinion, it is because of this gap between the realities on the ground and the recommendations that come forward. And that leads to this inertia in implementation of what seems to be, common knowledge to the rest of the world, and we are committed to those treaties and all. So that I think is a major issue. The action is not there, even within the judicial system.
But from a layman's perspective, most of us do not know the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist.
That's a good starting point. Well, I mean, I was just introduced as a psychologist just now, when I'm not. So I would have been delighted to be a psychologist, so no offense there. But I probably lacked the capacity to be a psychologist and therefore became a psychiatrist. So, you're so right. There are confusions and misgivings, and this is probably this is the most inert of those misunderstandings. The issues are far bigger. For example, the issue is that we do not understand that when a particular crime is committed, it cannot be committed by a body. A crime hatches is somewhere else, a part that we do not recognize as part of the body. We call it the mind. Very conveniently, we keep looking at the body and what it is doing. And therefore, we give opinions about it, we take them to the court, we make adequate adjustments according to whatever that person's body has done. What is going on in his mind is judged exclusively by the people who have never read anything about the mind. And that is what the Safiya Bano case has solved for once. That while you are an expert in assessing the disability or differently abled, as my Lord has just said, differently abled person, it's so obvious to the naked eye, you actually end up, and no offense to anybody here, you actually positively discriminate a person with a physical disability. We all stand up, we try to look after, we offer them a seat. We positively discriminate for a person with a physical disability. But since the naked eye cannot see the disability of the mind, we negatively discriminate against a person with a disability of the mind. Now that is a confusion, just like the one that you were just, which is born out of what? Number one, and if you allow me a couple of minutes to go into the philosophical basis of why is that ignorance there. Well, foremost, it is because of a phenomena that continuously is something that we struggle with, and that is time. It takes no time at all to recognize a physical disability. The moment a person with physical disability would come in, you would recognize it. But it takes that much time to understand the disability of the mind. And since the courts believe, and we've heard this cliche for all my life, justice delayed is justice denied, we think that it will delay the process of justice. And therefore, in that hurry of coming to the conclusion about the disability of a person with a problem of the mind, we make a very quick judgment out of our understanding of what it could be. And therefore, that hurry or that time constraint that is there, we do not want to spend that much time with the issue of mental disability. So that's the first challenge that occurs. The second challenge is that the people who actually make the judgment about the mind's disability do not have the tools to do that. The tool is, number one, the knowledge, number two, the skill, number three, the attitude. They do not have the tools. So, no offense at all. If I did not have a tool to actually deal with the situation, I will never be able to come to terms with it. So I think it's very, very important to understand that when we are dealing with an issue of the mind, we need an expert who is given time foremost to come to a conclusion. And when we will hurry in terms of a judicial decision, hurry is probably a non-starter as far as delivery of justice is concerned. It will kill the process of justice straight away in terms of disabilities of the mind. I think if you can understand these two aspects, one, that to grant time, and two, to understand who has that knowledge, skill, and requisite attitude that is required to identify the disability, and we marry the two, I think that is how the judicial system would be best served in terms of filling that gap.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. But just understanding, the regime which you state is basically the horse being the social understanding and acceptance of mental disability, and the cart to follow is the regime. So you also see that as a work in progress where it has to inculcate the social fabric, the understanding.
I wish I could say it work in progress. I think it's a complete non-starter as far as I'm concerned right now. It's the cart is just somewhere else and the horse is somewhere else grazing in the fields.
So can you recommend how, in your expertise, can be brought closer to our expertise for the benefit of the user?
I think the judicial system needs to become probably far more assertive in terms of implementation. You see, we have tremendous respect and awe of the judicial system in Pakistan. And if the judiciary in Pakistan takes it up on itself, say, okay, we've passed this order, we've given this, we are going to make sure that it is implemented. See, if a law has been formed, it is not being implemented, we cannot really leave it to the will and the ideas and the skills of the executive only, which has 100 other priorities. The biggest defense about psychosocial disabilities, ladies and gentlemen, that I have seen as a mental health professional is, and I once was talking to a very senior executive with whom I had gone to meet about the implementation of the Safia Bano case. The perfect defense was, sorry for my yup if somebody doesn't understand, but it has to be said in Urdu to understand what it means. Dr. Saab, ਇੱਥੇ ਚੰਗੇ ਭਲੇ ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਸਟਿਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲ ਰਿਹਾ, जो बिल्कुल फिट लोग हैं उनको जस्टिस नहीं मिल रहा, आप मेंटली इल को लेके बैठ गए. This is the state of affair of the executive, meaning thereby that the abled are not getting the proper justice that they deserve. You're talking about the disabled. Now look at the defense. You see, completely forgetting, and my argument to the gentleman was that, sir, a society is not judged by how you treat and handle abled. The strength and character and personality of a society is judged by how it deals with the less fortunate, how it deals with the disabled. That is what the societies are made for. The abled can look after themselves even in the jungle. They don't need a legal system to actually look after themselves. Many people in Pakistan actually decide their own fate when it comes to settling of scores is concerned. They don't even consult the judiciary. It is actually the disabled, the marginalized, and amongst them the person who actually in the court would say, if the Honorable Justice asks the person with a mental illness, are you ill? He would say, no, sir, I'm very fine. I'm okay. And if you ask him, do you understand what is going on here in the court? He would say, of course I do. Because of the grandiosity and the lack of understanding of his own disability. See? So I think that plight, that irony of a mentally disabled is something that is not understood by our society. It's that irony that needs to be looked at. So if the society is not going to rise, and it is too busy trying to find out what is the price of the onion in this country, and that is the issue that is being discussed constantly, महंगाई हो गई है, ये हो गया, वो हो गया, then we are sort of probably living at just at the level of the body. I think it is for everybody, each one of us sitting around the table here in this hall and in the street, alongside the judicial system, who would have to rise and probably speak out of their skins to actually fight for the rights of the psychologically disabled.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Saab. That was very elaborative.
Thank you. Thanks.
Asking yourself, yourself being a lawyer and a right activist, and a right activist on the legal front and at the social front. Do you see any changes in recent times in relation to these rights being upheld, recognized?
Definitely, I feel a great difference. I mean, I was paralyzed and I'm a wheelchair user because of an accident that happened. And, initially, the environment was very different. I'll just talk from the point of view of, just the civil society and the mindset that we face. I mean, when I used to go out, I used to be met with stares, and, I used to be treated like I'm sort of like a circus and, some alien body that has come. But, over the years, I've seen a remarkable difference. People have become very accepting of people with disabilities, and the major, I think, reason for that is that people of disabilities have sort of, they've noticed that there is no conversation about them without them, and they're sort of like learning to take charge now. I filed a petition in the High Court in 2018 asking for enforcement of accessibility in which were already present in the bylaws of the Development Authority in Lahore, which mandated for a ramp and a wheelchair accessible toilet. I mean, unfortunately, that petition didn't amount to much because me and my counsel, we were dismissed as being, very impractical and unrealistic. And, as I was told that, oh, why do you need, you need a ramp because you need to go to a restaurant, that we understand. But why do you need access to a property dealer's office that is on the first floor? What's that going to be of use to you? So I was like, these ramps, this accessibility is not just for me. There's like an entire population out there of people with different kinds of disabilities or different abilities, whatever you might call that. So, then our petition initially was disposed of because there was a Supreme Court judgment which dealt with greater PW rights in a very generic term. Then in May 2021, my lawyer and I, we devised a strategy. We sought for enforcement of accessibility to infrastructure, all and issues that are faced by people with all kinds of disability, not just in Lahore but all over Punjab. And that time we were lucky that our petition appeared in the court of Justice Jawad Hassan. Justice Jawad Hassan uh, he went above and beyond for what we asked. We asked for a ramp, and due to his proactive intervention, we came back with this huge law, this piece of legislation that is going to cover all of Punjab, and it will, once passed, it's going to empower people of disabilities, of all kinds of disabilities, and give them the kind of life that they deserve, that is of dignity and freedom and independence. And we don't, as a person with a disability, I don't need to fight for those rights. Those rights should be given to me. And I feel special because as someone who was not born with a disability, it was mind boggling for me to understand that how come when I was walking, I had all those rights, all those benefits. Now that just because I'm in a wheelchair, I'm somebody different now. I'm not a person with a disability. I'm Sana Khurshid, who just happens to have a disability, just happen to be in a wheelchair. I mean, your legs take you to places. My wheelchair takes me to places. There's no difference. So, I mean, we're so grateful to Justice Jawad Hassan and for his intervention that he intervened and he got all the relevant stakeholders and different government departments, and I think it was the first time and in this province that everybody who had a stake in this got together, sat down, and formulated a piece of legislation. And as Mehak was saying, I was also part of that Child Care Commission, and we tried to incorporate a lot of points from that paper as well, because a lot of effort went into that, and it's a beautiful piece of paper. And uh, I'll tell you that what we did different in this draft bill was we introduced screening processes for both public and private school educational institutes for them to screen children for all kinds of disabilities, visible and invisible. Disability is not just someone who is visually impaired or is in a wheelchair or is using a crutch or can't hear. There are so many disabilities, impairments out there that you won't even understand. And when we were drafting that bill, Harris was there. We put in a lot of effort, and I think my contribution was that let's make the definition very fluid, so that in the future, if new things come up which are graded as being, disabilities, those should be covered by this draft bill as well. And one of the key features of this, another which I loved, was that let's not make special schools for children with special needs. Let's not segregate. Let's integrate.
Integrate.
A person, you can learn from me, I learn a lot from you. Just give us a chance. Let's mingle. We can all contribute. And, at the end of the day, the goal to, succeed and to live a better life and to make the sort of environment around you better, that's what you're working for. That's what I'm working for. And, it's enough to say that, the state should facilitate us, the judicial organs should facilitate us, the legislature should facilitate us. That's a given. I'm not arguing with that. But as individuals, I feel we have responsibility as well to create an inclusive environment where everybody can, participate and contribute and thrive. And, as individuals, we need to look into our own self and see and ask this question: what are we doing to make the environment around us inclusive? I mean, if you work in a law firm, if you work in an office, wherever, whatever, what are you proactively doing to create an inclusive environment and include people who you think are different than you? And once you meet people who you regard as different, you realize they're not very different at all, because at their core, we're all human beings. I mean, despite my wheelchair, I'm Sana, and we can have a conversation. There is no, my wheelchair is not holding me back from doing anything what I can. So, there's a mindset transformation needs to be done. And I feel it's like a two-edged sword. We want people with disabilities to be represented and, go into the mainstream. But for that, you need to provide them access. Because unless and until there's a ramp in a building, I cannot enter it. Unless and until there is a audio loop, a person with hearing issues cannot, function. So to make people with disabilities or different abilities become a part of the mainstream, you need to provide them access, and you need to provide them with the right tools for them to live a life which you are living. Because, like I said, it's a basic human right, and nobody can deny that.
Just one further thing. How can we improve the situation? There are international practices, but as from what I gather from yourself is there is the first mental wheel which we have to lift. It's that of taboos. How can we improve the frameworks and the systems in relation to it?
I mean,
How can we learn from international experiences?
like I said before, we've got some amazing honorable judges like Justice Jawad, Justice Mansoor Ali Shah, Justice Shahid. I mean, they have brought the issues of people with disabilities to the mainstream. I mean, like telling about the language. Language makes a huge difference. I mean, when you use words like disabled, and in Urdu they're even more crude, and you sort of enforce the negative mindset that already prevails. So language has the power to make or break. So when you see such a news making front page, news that or do not use words like retarded and disabled and cripple, and there's so many, that plays a big part. And to improve the situation, like I said before, people with disabilities need to come out of their houses, and they're ready to come out as long as you provide them the proper tools and provide them access. They'll come and they'll tell you what kind of issues they face. And one of the great things about when we were drafting this draft bill, Justice Jawad intervened, and he directed that people from different departments, like Sara was saying, there's no cohesion between different departments. But when we sat down to formulate this draft bill, we worked with people from different departments, all the stakeholders. We had a roundtable conference, and we included people with disabilities. Because they are the ones who can tell you what kinds of issues they face. You cannot even imagine the kinds of obstacles and the hurdles and the things I face. Won't be able to imagine. I need to tell you what kind of problems I face. So we included those in the draft bills, and we are part of a lot of UN conventions for the rights of people with disabilities, and we've adopted, we've ratified it, but until and unless they're enforced, and until and unless those are translated according to what our culture and what we face, and it's not just in the life in the urban cities are very different from the ones in the rural cities. And I've met a lot of people from and the laws and the rules and regulations need to be implemented from the grassroots level. So, yes, they said, it's a work in progress, but I'm very positive, and I am a person who views the glass as half full. So I feel like the first step, not even the first step, the first leap has been taken, and hopefully, inshallah, it will keep on improving. Because who could imagine that we'd be talking about this over here? It wasn't so a few years ago, and until recently, it wasn't so. So, progress is being made. Obviously, there's a lot to be done, and no piece of legislation is perfect. But you start and then you go along, and that's how societies change. That's how societies are made. And like they say, it takes a village. So we've just started. The journey is long, but we are there. I'm here. We're ready to fight the good fight. So bring it on.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been very refreshing to hear it firsthand and understand what the issues are. Turning to Harisa. Harisa, yourself being a lawyer, what safeguards or provisions to the benefit of these specially abled people you have in the legal system?
Well, from the conversation that we've just had, what I have gathered so far is it's the mindset that needs to change, especially the mindset of the executive. As Dr. Sabha said, we can have judgments, but there might not be an enforcement, and also of the legislature. If I can share a couple of examples where our judiciary has stepped up and there has not been a lot of doom and gloom. In 2016, a young boy, 24 years old, came to me. He was an MA in English literature. He applied for a job in the government of Punjab to be recruited as a lecturer. He topped all tests, cleared all interviews, but when he was about to be appointed, we found out that there is a policy, there is a written policy of the government of Punjab, an education policy, that blind cannot be lecturers. So blind can be any. So we challenged that policy before the Honorable High Court at Lahore. The case came up before Honorable Justice Mansoor Ali Shahji, then was in the High Court. And it was rightly struck down. At the time, Justice Anwar was the lawyer for the government of Punjab. And he also took the high moral ground, which any lawyer should take, that it shouldn't be about your own client, it should be doing the right thing. In fact, Justice Anwar came up and assisted the court with the verse of a Holy Quran, which translates into and says, it's not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts. So the judgment, it starts off with that verse. And in that became, at the time, one of the leading cases where the court held that we must have an inclusive approach. We must use technology. And in that judgment, another interesting thing was held. Whenever there is an advertisement by the government of Punjab, and then there is a quota, for example, there is a 3% quota. So what happened was that if more differently abled people would come, they would restrict them to that 3% quota, that you are only there. The judgment said no. First, the differently abled would compete on the open merit. And once they cannot compete on the open merit, this is there as a protection to them. You can't just cap them. So it's the mindset which is mind-boggling, so to speak. A couple of years later, a blind lawyer came to me. So he was a first-class lawyer. We could discuss. He applied as a job in the prosecution department of the government of Punjab to be recruited as a lawyer. Same thing happened. The government of Punjab stated, and the prosecution, that how can a blind person be a lawyer? What good he would be? So we filed that case, and gladly it came before Justice Jawad, who is one of the most enterprising judges when it comes to promoting people with disabilities or people with special needs. And gladly that impugned letter of the government of Punjab, where a blind lawyer couldn't work, was set aside, and he's still working. And he got married, and he's alive, and he's one of their better employees. So the issue here is it's not about all doom and gloom, but yes, not many people can approach the superior courts. It's not very easy to approach the superior courts. So it's the mindset which needs to change, where we need to see whether we have an inclusive approach, whether we can aid them. For instance, these two individuals, these were young, educated, differently abled people. I was surprised. I'm still friends with them. They would come to my office without any assistance. They can order in Uber. They can use Facebook. They were both cricket fans. We used to discuss cricket. And when I found out the West has such an inclusive approach that there are special apps, it's not the routine Uber app that we would use. There is a special Facebook. They would read books. They would listen to commentary. So the fact is that if the mindset doesn't change, so no legislation, no judgment can do any good. As we've just recently discussed, the Safia Bano case, that was a game changer in that field. Dr. Saab and others worked really hard. Justice Manzoor Malik gave one of the most fantastic judgments where the entire law on the field was discussed, and it's now been cited in India. However, there is no, I've just found out that the boards have not been formed. And what that judgment stated was, it was a guiding principle to all magistrates and judges working in the lower judiciary that, for instance, when a disabled person or when a mentally handicapped person would come to you, how would you treat that person? So you have to first make a tentative assessment. Once you've done that tentative assessment, then you send it to the medical board. So when there is no medical board, how do you safeguard that individual? Absolutely. So yes, I would agree with that. We have to have some sort of an hope. It's work in progress, but I would have to agree with Dr. Saab that the cart is somewhere else and the horse is missing. It's not even grazing. And the only safeguard that we have is our superior judiciary. And coming from the Lahore High Court, I'm a little biased, but I think the Lahore High Court is leading the way with judges like Justice Jawad and Justice Anwar, and now we have Justice Mansoor Ali Shah in the Supreme Court. Even recently, Justice Qazi Faiz Isa has given a judgment where he stated that we cannot use these words. We have to stop using these words. One of the lower court judges, I think it was a Peshawar lower court judgment, where he used words like crippled and handicapped and retarded. And that lower court judge was admonished in a Supreme Court judgment that you have to be sensitive to this. So unless, as Sana has pointed out, that yes, the society is moving forward, the stairs have gotten less. For instance, when we go to London, you see the bus would come down, and then there would be a ramp, and it would go, and there cannot, in their bylaws, there cannot be a building where there cannot be a wheelchair access. You cannot have stairs without a wheelchair access. So on that point, Justice Jawad, on Sana Khurshid's petition, where she was the petitioner, led the way and gave, and just recently, as of 2021, gave one of the leading judgments on this field. And on that judgment, now most of the development authorities, including LD and DHA, are making all the ramps, and there has been progress. But you see, this is not the role of the judiciary. Judiciary can do to some extent. There can be individual cases, there can be enterprising, progressive judges, but it's the legislature and the executive. As Dr. Saab has pointed out, when he went to the executive, the remarks were, and same is the case with animal rights, for instance. So, and to some extent, they're not absolutely wrong. Nobody's getting, it's very difficult to get justice in Pakistan, and it's not the fault of judges. Everybody's overburdened. There are more than 100 cases. Even in the Lahore High Court, for instance, we have the strength of 60 judges. We have 45 judges. In the Supreme Court, the strength is 17. We have 12 judges. So we need to address the elephant in the room as well. We need more judges, we need better infrastructure for the judges, we need better assistance, and then the executive needs to also be more cognizant of these issues.
And like Safia Bano was a step in the right direction. It has it still needs a bit more understanding, a bit more implementation. But do you see in that the judicial system in consolidation of such laws and policies, do you see any other areas which require addressal?
Well, of course, for instance, if we specifically speak about the differently abled individuals, just getting access to a courtroom, any courtroom, there is no wheelchair access, for instance. No differently abled person can reach a court. Not any court. I would say not even the Supreme Court. You cannot, now there is a
A
lift
ramp
in
now.
courtroom number 1, but it would be really difficult. Even it's difficult to walk to courtroom number 1, but yes, there is no access. It's very, very difficult. So just the access, and then the judges, especially the lower court judiciary, needs to be sensitive about the fact that a differently abled individual has come. There has to be special priority cases that it's at least their cases have to be put on a fast track. If a differently abled individual has to come again and again to a courtroom, it's going to be very difficult. So it's the executive and the legislature and maybe the judges need to come up and have a reform and have a policy where at least their cases could be put on a priority line. So if a differently abled individual who's not been given a job and who deserves to have a job, he can't contest the case for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. His case has to be dealt with on a daily basis. There has to be a policy to that extent. So we do that for overseas Pakistanis, we do that for commercial courts, for big companies, but we must do that also for differently abled individuals. And and this is an amazing step in this conference, at least we're highlighting the issues. If we don't highlight the issues, no good can come of it.
Communication. aspect
Communication,
of it.
yeah.
Understanding.
There's a silver lining to what has just been said. And in the Safia Bano case, one of the recommendations was to actually raise knowledge, skills, and attitudes of the judiciary, the criminal justice system in general, people who work in prisons, even the judges. The Islamia University Bahawalpur, the House might like to know this, has just started a certificate course on forensic mental health. And that forensic mental health course has been initiated primarily in response to the Safia Bano case. So there is now a possibility, if a lawyer or somebody from the judicial system wants to know more about forensic mental health, there is a certificate course subsequently leading to a diploma course actually, which has been started with collaboration with Queen's University, Canada. And Justice Project Pakistan is a partner in that process. So there are possibilities for people to know about it and learn more about it. That's a silver lining.
That's a
I think
silver
we are
lining.
progressing,
So
as Sana has just said.
steps in the right direction, but
Are
miles to
already
go.
in place.
But
Yes.
miles to go.
Yes.
Any questions from our panelists, please?
So we have a better idea. Sorry, I'm a lawyer. I'm used to speaking without a mic. So I hope next year, we'll have some UN expert that can also guide us on the convention rights and how we can better apply them. I just wanted to say on Safia Bano, and I think this might be, maybe it's not just our problem, it happens a lot. One is that I think we were expecting a deluge of people like the, UNODC or UNDP or the big, INGOs that work in this field to descend after Safia Bano and institute these large-scale trainings. Because I think, and there's a lot of relevant people in the room here from the missions also, where they fund a lot of capacity building work. And we thought, here we go, right? Police needs training, prisons need training. All over Pakistan, the Supreme Court has given a green light for all the trainings. And it hasn't happened. And it's like, the horse, we feel like the horse. you know, we're grazing around writing these manuals, but it's not humanly possible for JPP to do all the trainings. We've trained some provincial authorities in Sindh, in the prisons, we've talked to the mental health authority, but it can't be one small NGO whose job is not primarily to do trainings to be the horse that does this. So now I'm really interested by what you said and the holistic approach that the Honorable High Court took to bring the stakeholders. Is there something you can suggest to us, the horses in the Safiya Bano judgment, on what we can do to actually bring this judgment back to life and bring stakeholders back? Do we go back to court? Do we, what do we do? Where do we
Going
go?
back to court shouldn't be the only way. I mean, you can't just depend on petitions to come and, highlight issues. And like you said before, we need a cohesive policy in which different stakeholders, different government departments, different, people work together towards the same goal. I mean, if you deal with children with special needs, I mean, you need to work with the health department. Social welfare department is not the only one who can handle all this. So we sort of need like policy. And I think, like you advocate, penalizing every wrong is definitely not the answer. So maybe sort of giving incentives for people who are actually making their environment inclusive, giving them some sort of incentive, which, so that others can follow suit. I mean, it's a mammoth task, but I mean, we need to start from somewhere, and, the whole point is to take the first initiative and go from there, and hopefully, and start from Punjab, and a lot of work, NGOs and all, they're doing a lot of work. Maybe the state needs to step in and facilitate them and give them the proper platforms to do their work.
Yeah. I'll just add that it's very important when you're talking about children or people with disabilities that we understand what is disability. So it's not just an impairment that's present, but it's also a barrier that's basically not letting them do things that a normal person or anyone can do. So if we work on barriers, maybe the health can really work on the impairment part. But if we work on the barriers which are social, legislative barriers, then maybe that can help us move more towards system development for children with people with disabilities.
And Sarah, maybe Article 204 of the Constitution, you can file a contempt in the Supreme Court, making all the chief secretaries a party, and
Why not?
I can do it pro bono for you. And Qasim will concede.
Ma'am, please.
The solution is that I can give you a good suggestion. What we did in Sana case was that I got government to draft laws on food with MS Bansoda judgment, and then on other areas, domestic workers. This time why it was better was because I thought that I was lucky that the minister himself came to the court. He said, I want to work with the court, and I want to work with everyone. When he came with that will, I said, if you want to do something, do a workshop and involve every department of the government. Under the Federal Rule of Business 73, I gave them, Punjab Government Rules of Business 2011, gave them the mandate to make laws and dues. And then I said, you have to be booked in one room all day, but I want that conference to be no chair. All wheelchairs, people who wants to do it, they should all sit in front. And then you should have a round table of every secretary. I want mandate and I want tenders of everyone. And I want these things to be done, because one day you sit down and then they all started, they got gelled in. When they gelled in together, they're coming out with draft, and I must commend Khwaja Haris and Hassan bin Haris and Ali Chutai and Sana. They all sat down with Mariam, Haris' partner Mariam. They all sat, Mariam Hayat. They all sat down and they drafted a law with the government. And later on, I've heard that they all got awards at the Governor House by the President. And so all have done well, except the judge.
Well, Justice Jawad is one of the, is the face of the Lahore High Court, and we are very proud to have him and keep on delivering such judgments, Mr. Jawad. Getting back to the previous discussion of the panel, I have 3 questions and 1 comment. The first question to Professor Muwaddat. and that is that, it's an expert opinion. The psychiatrist gives an opinion, positive opinion or negative opinion about someone. Obviously, it's an expert opinion. The judge cannot challenge it as it is. But the judge can always question the process of formation of that opinion. So my question to you, number one, is that whether this process, how far the court can go into ascertaining the actual process. And secondly, my question to Sana, our pride of society, that she is, mashallah, very well accepted, and she is accepted in all respects. In many cases, I've seen that when a person is, there's a seat available in the government department, and 2% or 3% quota is allocated for, people who are not in the main competition list. Then they ask you to go and examine yourself to a particular board. Now, that board ascertains the disability or less ability on different parameters, keeping in view the type of job for which the candidate is applying. So in your view, what do you suggest that with the passage of time, with the introduction of modern technologies, the type of jobs are growing day by day, and they become more sophisticated, do not require the physical perfection of the body. It is actually the mind. So, and my comment to Mr. Haris Azmat's point is that in Lahore High Court, in Punjab Judiciary, we have inducted a visually impaired civil judge, and he's doing very well. And secondly, if you have not, but please do visit Lahore High Court, there are ramps on different main, pedestals which lead to the court access. So I would like to respond, the panel to respond my questions. Thank you.
Can I?
Please.
So I think we need to highlight that we as mental health personnel and professionals who are members of a medical board are essentially a mean or a stool that the judge is using to come to a conclusion. It's like the microscope in the hands of a pathologist. Here, the medical board is the microscope and not the pathologist. So we just serve the purpose of looking at things that the judge probably, on account of his own area of speciality, would not bother about or doesn't have the time or the expertise to do so. So we are there to assist the court to come to a more informed judgment. We are not there in any way to influence the judge or to make him believe that we are the final say in it. He has to take into consideration several other aspects of the evidence also. So we just provide that assistance. The process that today is in place for mental health professionals is very, very scientific. We now have access to MRIs, electroencephalographies. We have various kinds of psychometric tools with very high sensitivity and specificity. So it's no more sitting and putting the patient on a couch of the famous Freud. It's something very, very scientific and specific. And when we compile the report, it's not the patient is insane. We very specifically highlight and link up the disabilities of the individual as related to the crime committed. And that is the role at that particular point in time. Thank you very much for pointing out. So at that particular point in time, what was the disability that could have impaired his mens rea or intent in that particular issue? And therefore, we need to look at the expert's opinion more in terms of a jigsaw puzzle in which they provide another piece to complete the picture, but not the whole picture. So with all humility is the role of the board in any particular case. And then I think the Safiya Banu case judgment really stamped and sealed the issue by saying there's never going to be a single mental health professional who's going to give an opinion. It is going to be a board of 5 people. consensus of 5 people. In mental health profession, I can tell you, coming together to come to a single conclusion is a remarkable thing. I don't know what happens among judges, but we are not very famous for formulating, a consensus on issues. So to come to specifically a conclusion and then write down a detailed, specific report rather than passing a judgment that this cannot be punished or not punished. I think that's the point I thought I'd clarify for you, sir. I hope I've answered you.
Yes, you have.
Yes.
A supplementary question,
Sir.
and that is that same principle will apply to a convict who is undergoing imprisonment and suddenly
Absolutely,
has
sir.
found himself to be a mentally disabled sort of person.
Absolutely, sir.
Yourself.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Valerie Khan Yousafzai. I'm a gender and child protection development professional. I have a question which is related to, on one hand, the judicial approach to certain questions, or rather the judicial answer, and also maybe a more governance-oriented approach to it. Number one, we, along with Zindagi Trust and Sahil and a few other child protection activists, submitted a public interest litigation related to the need to ensure that the curriculum, the educational curriculum since a very early age, would include life skills-based education. We focus on child protection, but I think listening to you and listening to Sana especially, it just clicks that we probably should think of a wider agenda and actually start sensitizing and engaging children into seeing things in a different and far more inclusive manner since they actually join the environment. So my question to you is, how could you help us in sensitizing the government into ensuring that inclusion, participation, and safe recognition starts from the very early age when they start school, number one. Secondly, I think we also need to, this is just one segment of a conference. This really calls for a much wider conference, like Justice Jawad Hassan suggested, where we also need to ask ourselves, what is the place by Professor Afridi. So we really need to catch up the bus much more quickly if we want to have a more, thank you, relevant dispensation of justice, which can never be limited to a trial case and its conclusion only. Thank you.
To the first limb of your question, I believe it is not a problem in Pakistan alone. It is moving towards it. Here, quoting from Safiya Bano again, we treaded into a place where which was not touched. Even globally, there were confusions as far as schizophrenia being a mental disease, if at all. The circumstances were such that in that particular litigation and the assistance rendered to the court helped to achieve a breakthrough, which is a norm now. As far as educational systems are concerned, from what I gather, it has to be a social awakening. And that social awakening it takes time. Governments are being executive creatures, but are also dependent upon what is required. They have to juggle with their priorities. So, in that priority list, I think it's a good work because we are here together. And this would open up a further debate, and that further debate inculcates into your heads what is important for a particular field. We are a developing country. We have our own financial restraints. We have other restraints too. As far as the judicial side is concerned, judiciary is also criticized sometimes for its activism. They are also bound by certain boundaries because such is the way of the constitution. The society, parliament, and the government in time, it all has to be a partnership for the benefit of the polity in whole. And I believe, as I said in the beginning, it is a global melting pot. In some places we are doing better, in some places we are not. It's a bit of a battle. Please.
The process
If you may.
that lady was talking about after the judgment has been passed, I think the three specific areas is pre-trial, during the trial, and somebody who's been now sentenced, what happens to that particular person. That's a major area of concern, largely because of the fact that the current legislation provides for sending of somebody who is mentally disabled to a hospital meant for a high security unit. Unfortunately, the current circumstances as they stand in Pakistan today, the psychiatry wards, the high security zones probably are faring far worse than the jails themselves. So it's not just that, you just send this patient from the jail to an asylum come Department of Mental Health. So I think that the situation and circumstances within the departments of mental health and those high security units, for example, at the Punjab Institute of Mental Health, the Giddu Bandar place in Hyderabad, and several other places that are meant for to serve as forensic units where people who have been sentenced and are suffering from mental illness are then kept. They would much prefer actually to be in the jail rather than in those settings. So the circumstances there also need to be improved if you want to. If you want to really see what happens to a mentally ill, you need to go and see the plight of the mentally in the rehab units in and around Islamabad. And I think that's another human rights issue that needs to be looked at.
It's unregulated, so
Yes.
It's not regulated.
it is unregulated.
It's a huge abuse of human rights taking place. You can actually ring up a rehab unit in and around Islamabad today and ask for 10 people who would come into a house, pick up an individual, and take him to a rehab unit, and he may never see the day of the light of the day for months together. And everybody is quiet about it. So even the Mental Health Act, Punjab Mental Health Act or Federal Mental Health Act is not being implemented. So while we're looking at the gaps from the forensic mental health perspective, let us also understand that the routine Mental Health Act as regards the treatment given to the mentally ill also not being followed right here in the
And if I
federal
may add,
capital.
I mean, you cannot just dismiss all people with, mental issues as insane or crazy.
Absolutely.
There's so many grades to it which people don't understand. And there's not one fit policy for all or one medication that's going to treat all of them. Like there's not just one single disability. There are different sorts. So I think screening from a very early age and evaluation, those play a very big part. And, different departments need to work together, like the health department, and if it's a prisoner in the, so evaluation plays a big part in the rehabilitation and the treatment later on.
When we're talking about, like adding to your point, when we're talking about disabilities, it's very easy to say, group them all together into one and say, okay, everything can relate to all disabilities. But we need to understand when we're talking about mental health, when we're talking about disabilities, every case is specific. Every child or every human being has a specific needs that need to be looked at, and then we need to see how things can go forward. So, for example, if you're talking about a child with an intellectual disability and you're grouping them with a physical disability, it's not just for them also. So that needs to be looked at, especially when we're talking about policies and legislations.
So much so that even the inclusive education that you were referring to can be a double-edged sword. And it has mixed reviews around the world. Now, everybody is talking about inclusive education. Children can be, if I'm offending somebody, I'm sorry. Children can be very, very cruel. In their early years, if you have read Lord of the Flies, so they can be very cruel. So it's very important to understand when to actually make education inclusive and where. So inclusive justice system, wonderful thought, because everybody is grown up. To have inclusive education and do away with special education schools completely may not also be a very good idea.
Over-regulating has never yielded fair results.
Assessment comes into play. Like
Yes,
some
assessments.
kids can attend regular school, some need special attention.
Yes,
When
yes.
it's
There are
like
certain...
mild and
yeah.
moderate, then yes.
Exactly.
But with severe.
The idea being not
Then
to
that's
create
different.
ghettos.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
May I?
Please.
In the discussion, there was a reference to resource allocation and scarcity of resources and government priorities, and probably you, the moderator, said that. I have a question first for you and then for everybody. How did you came? How did you reach here? While sitting on some kind of vehicle? Maybe it's a motorcycle or, a car or anything. You were on chair, but why didn't you bring your vehicles into this room? Only Sana was able to come on chair in this room because the place were only accessible to that particular kind of chair. So I just have a comment that it's not about the resources, it's more about the understanding. It's more about the behavior that we need to change.
No,
Thank you.
resources are not limited to finances. It is the human resource you have to put in. It is the psychological resources, your mental resources you have to put in.
And if I may
Technological
add,
resources.
this hotel didn't have a ramp before, and I called them out for it, and they were kind enough to provide ramps. So, just on a lighter note, on a side note.
Anybody else, please? I would like to thank, on your behalf, I'd like to thank the panelists for their time and their valuable insights. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, esteemed panelists. That was an absolutely insightful discussion. We will now have a short 15-minute health break. We'll reconvene after 15 minutes.